Joining me now to talk next steps is Brian Claypool, trial attorney and legal analyst. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Hi, Natasha. Thanks for having me.
And Kohberger's extradition hearing was yesterday. We know he will be sent to Idaho. What can we expect to happen when he gets there?
Well, Natasha, an arrest in a murder prosecution case is just the first phase. What I think a lot of people are missing is under Idaho law, unless you're indicted by a grand jury, which didn't take place here, you're entitled to what's called a preliminary hearing within 14 days of your first appearance in court in Idaho. Why is that important? Because once Kohberger appears in court, either this week or next week, the clock's ticking, Natasha, and within 14 days, there has to be a hearing in which prosecutors have to put on, quote, substantial evidence of each element of the first-degree murder charges at this hearing. And this is not a slam dunk. And that's why when I heard about this genealogy testing, I was a little bit bewildered, because genealogy testing to form the basis for an arrest warrant is not going to cut muster in a preliminary hearing. They should have taken a DNA swab, a saliva swab of Kohberger right away. If he didn't consensually give that, they should have gone in and gotten an emergency court order to get his actual DNA swab and then take his actual DNA and match that with any evidence they have either at the crime scene or in the Elantra, for example, hair samples, blood stains in the car. And I'm hoping they do that because they've only got a short window to do it.
Yeah, you're mentioning time is of the essence. And meanwhile, we were also expecting that he would be extradited and he would be moved to Idaho fairly quickly. We're hearing that there may be several days before that happens. Why would they wait before moving him to Idaho?
Yeah, good question. My personal feeling is I think they need more time. And quite frankly, think about this, Natasha. Prosecutors also have to prove premeditation, right? That's one of the elements of first-degree murder. Do they have any evidence of that yet? I mean, we're talking, the chief is out there saying, oh, we've got DNA evidence. Okay, maybe you do. We don't know yet because you didn't even have the DNA of Kohberger, right? But do you have, for example, social media posts? Do you have text messages that would show that Kohberger knew any of the victims? If prosecutors go into this preliminary hearing in the next few weeks without evidence that Kohberger had a connection to any of these victims, I don't see how they can prove the premeditation component of a murder charge at a preliminary hearing.
I see. And meanwhile, it is such a high-profile case. What percentage likelihood do you think that this will be moved to a different location, that the trial will not actually take place in Moscow, Idaho?
Well, that's an excellent question. I got up this morning and I thought the exact same thing. There's no chance that this trial is going to take place in Moscow. I mean, his lawyers, Kohberger's lawyers, are going to file a motion for change of venue, and I'm sure that's going to be granted to make sure there's no appellate issues down the road. And one other point I wanted to make, Natasha, is this crime scene. It's important for your viewers to know that a few days ago, investigators were like, oh, well, you know, we're done doing our investigation at the crime scene. You can renovate the property now and get it back to normal. That would be a colossal mistake, and that would form the basis for an appeal if there's a murder conviction. Why? Because Kohberger's lawyers are entitled to access to that crime scene to get their own forensic experts in there, for example, to do destructive testing of the floors, the walls, the bedding, if it's still there. And I was shocked to hear that. So look, I'm not being critical, but Idaho, I think, needs to be a little bit more fine-tuned in this. And the fact, like you said, that they're issuing a gag order already before Kohberger even gets to court, that's not how we do it in America. People in Idaho and across the country want to know what's going on. What evidence do you have of a potential quadruple murderer? We need to know.
Okay, I really appreciate those two insights you just pointed out. I do want to ask before we have to go, if this case does go to trial, what is the timeline? How soon do you think that could actually happen?
Yeah, usually a murder case gets to trial within a year unless defense lawyers, for example, ask for more time. There might, for give you an example, there might be a change of lawyering midway in the case where defense lawyers ask for a new trial. But typically, I did some research on this. I mean, under the Barker test, it's a U.S. Supreme Court case. A defendant has a Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial, Natasha. And the rule on that, it's a balancing test. But if you usually get beyond a year for a trial to take place, then lawyers for the defendant can start making an argument that Sixth Amendment constitutional rights to a speedy trial have been violated.
I really appreciate that context. Brian Claypool, thank you so much for joining us today. Legal analyst and trial attorney, appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.